just outside of Maldon at Langford, set in 7 acres, there is a brilliantly preserved 1920s steam-powered water pumping station. This was put in place to enhance the movement of fresh drinking water out of the local rivers, through the treatment works, and then along to the expanding town of Southend-on-Sea. I say brilliant, as this preserved facility has now been expanded into the Museum of Power. So there's a great deal more to see here beyond the pumping station itself. From small domestic items, a miniature railway system around the site, and a great display of all things power. This museum is maintained, run and open to the public by the volunteers and members there who were instrumental in saving the building and its remaining engine from removal and destruction at the end of its working life, which unfortunately was what happened to so many of these great reminders of what was our engineering and working heritage. When looking at this restored pumping station, it needs to be compared to similar facilities that had been put in place a few decades earlier than Langford. Although beam engines continue to work in some locations right through into the 1960s, such as these at the Abbey pumping station in Leicester. There were alternatives, such as these horizontal reciprocating engines that pumped drinking water at Millmease in Staffordshire. But the big triple expansion engines were really becoming the state of the art in the development of fixed steam-powered engines. They were often used to power big ships, like the Titanic. Therefore, in the 1920s, when this station was built, and big engines were needed to drive the powerful pumps required to move water about, and particularly to drive it long distances, it was triple expansion engines that were installed. So although there is much to see here, pride of place today is given to the magnificent Lilleshall triple expansion steam engine, which along with 2 others was driving the pumps here when the pumping station was closed, and after standing dormant for 50 years was returned to steam again in April 2011. We will hear from other members and volunteers of the museum about what is here to be experienced, but our primary guide will be Ray Anderton, who tells us about the station and particularly the engine.
The Museum of Power came to this site in 1997, having been established at Pitsea near Basildon in the early 90s, but they were restricted on accommodation facilities. Prime reason for the site was to supply drinking water to the Southend area. Marshall, our triple expansion pumping engine, was commissioned in February 1931. It's one of 3 engines located on the site and worked through till about 1961-62. Our research has shown that Marshall was the last triple expansion engine built by the Lilleshall Company in Oakengates in Shropshire. The engines were named after directors of the water company. Sadly, Bracey and Francis were scrapped in 1963. Marshall was saved by a little bit of insight from a director of the water company who said, I want it preserved, I may never see it running again, but some group of individuals may come along and restore it, renovate it, and now we're back on steam.
Ray touched on the fact that he and the other members and volunteers of the Trust were instrumental in bringing Marshall back to a condition to operate and to get the engine and pumping system back into steam. As a result, in September 2013, the museum was awarded Engineering Heritage Listed status by the Institution of Mechanical Engineers. The award of the certificate was in recognition of the contribution that the staff and volunteers have made in preserving this important part of Britain's heritage for future generations to enjoy.
Marshall is a steam-driven triple expansion engine, developing 350 brake horsepower at 32 RPM. Marshall was driving two sets of pumps, a set of low-pressure pumps which took water from the local catchment reservoir and the local rivers and pushed it into the treatment works located approximately a kilometre away from the main building. Once the water was treated, which took between 15 and 30 days, water was gravity fed back to the high lift pumps, and it was a single push 15 to 17 mile into the distribution network around the Southend area. Each engine on site could handle 4.5 million gallon per day low pressure and 4 million gallons high pressure. So in round numbers, about 36 million litres of water a day.
On steaming days, to give visitors an idea of what it was like in the pumping station when it did operate, periodically throughout the day, Marshall's steam valve is opened, bringing the engine back to life. To do that, the flywheel has to be positioned correctly, which in turn moves the pistons to a position where when the steam is let in, they will operate. To achieve this, with older engines, a bar was used to move the wheel around. Therefore, this is known as barring the flywheel, or barring the engine. This was hard and slow work, so on most engines, a subsidiary barring engine was used, and that was the case here at Langford. So in preparation to running Marshall, Ray sets the barring engine going.
For starting the engine and positioning the engine for maintenance purposes, we have a steam-driven barring engine, very similar to a car starter motor, with a pinion which engages with teeth on the OD of the flywheel and a Bendix system which brings the pinion out once the engine comes up to speed. Barring engine is running, and we're just bringing the engine round to the correct position for start. Cheating really, but we have a silver dash on the flywheel and we have two ideal positions. Okay, all clear, Rob?
Besides the engine, there is so much to see here at the Museum of Power. There are examples of how everyday household equipment developed, how car engines of all types work, as well as a fully functioning machine shop. In the past, there was an integral workshop where repairs were made, parts manufactured and maintenance carried out. This is now the steam pump tea room, where you can take a break in your visit to enjoy everything from a drink and an ice cream to all-day breakfasts and light meals. So, with the steam-powered engines on display, a ride on the miniature railway, a wander through the wooded grounds, and a break in the tea room, a visit here is a great day out for all of those interested in our working heritage and for the whole family. This short version about the Museum of Power is part of a new DVD being produced by Avalon Video, again looking at large fixed steam-powered facilities, still available to be seen here in the 21st century.